Hello and welcome to Ticker Ed, where we will be unpacking and examining the way we teach, listen and learn from primary school education through to university and beyond. Ticker Ed is backed by Inquiry Tracker, who are the all-in-one solution for schools to easily manage their future families. Designed by educationalists, it's a game changer to manage and grow inquiries and online enrolments. After all, it's the lifeline of every single school. This amazing Australian success story is taking the sector by storm and is now used by over 200 schools across 5 countries. You can find out more at inquirytracker.net. And remember folks, whilst Inquiry Tracker is the presenting sponsor of the program, the opinions and statements expressed in the following discussion are of course our own. And joining me in the studio now is my regular co-host and founder of Inquiry Tracker, Greg Campitelli. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on board. It's great to be here in Ticker Education. It's what a great initiative.
I was really excited when you guys brought this one to us because education is huge.
Massive.
And we've obviously seen a lot of shifting going on in the recent months.
Well, it's huge. It's a massive industry. If you just think about the scale of the thing in Australia, there's 9,500 schools in Australia. It's incredible.
Wow.
And some last estimates are about 4 million students. That's the students themselves, not to mention the teachers, all the support staff, the families.
The ripple effect.
The ripple effect is massive.
It's massive.
Huge.
So give us a little bit of a rundown about your experience with education and how Inquiry Tracker came about and everything that led you to this moment right now.
Well, you know what it's like. It's the overnight success. It's years in the making. And Mike, I shudder to think that I've been in my 4th decade of work.
Good on you.
In terms of education and not-for-profit sector. And really, I started out as teacher, year level coordinator, director of marketing, etc. Been on several boards and committees, and then branched out into consultancy. And my businesses have worked with schools over many years across Australia and globally, and been fortunate enough to speak at many conferences and so on. And you become, over time, some level of expertise, or a generalist, as some people might call me. And you build up this knowledge that you can then share. You know, you reflect, you write marketing plans, alumni engagement plans, these sorts of things. And basically, I saw a common phenomena that in this marketing space, we're good at kind of managing the incoming cohort of students, whether it's kids coming into prep or kids coming to year 7, whatever it is. And schools are good at their business, which is delivering education. But in terms of a business, you've got to look to your future prospect pipeline. It's all about growth. If you're, for example, a year 7 to 12 secondary college, all those children are gone in 6 years' time. So you've got to have new customers or new clients. So this idea of managing that pipeline was the genesis of Inquiry Tracker.
Very cool.
In 2017 we started. And so you start with a bright idea, with myself and my brother who's in Silicon Valley. He's the co-owner of the company.
Amazing.
Yeah, we'll bring him on the program at some point. And literally sitting over a beer one night in Silicon Valley, we thought, why not? Build a scalable solution. Help schools grow and manage their customer base really for them.
It's so interesting to think about schools as a business and being effective, because as somebody who went through school, you weren't considering everything that was going on in the background. And so I cannot wait to unpack and speak to some special guests and get some insight about what's going on. What will we be covering on the show, just for the audience, because there's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack, and it's not all about managing and growing enrolments, although that's probably our theme for today.
Yes.
But in terms of, like there's gender diversity, there's the growth of technology, there's subject selection. Geography is meritorious, don't get me wrong, but is understanding AI technology and robotics more important? Probably yes. So again, the way we deliver education is starting to change. We've traditionally delivered education from 9 o'clock till 3:30, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
That means schools are mainly empty. They're not, like most of the time, people aren't in them. At evenings, in the mornings, on the weekends, in school holidays. So in terms of when education is delivered, in the day, the length of the day, why don't we have, a morning and an afternoon learning environment? So things can change. And I think this program, Ticker Ed, is about thought leadership, about saying, what should we be doing differently? For example, in the UK, the gap year, year 13, it's almost mandated. It's almost a rite of passage, but it's absent in Australia. So should we be saying from a student in year 12, hey, while you're doing year 12, work out what you want to do for the rest of your life, while you're doing the hardest year of your life, and then make the decision to go into university. Instead of saying, why don't we have a compulsory gap year? These are the kind of topics that we want to unpack. Remote learning is the big one. And I think that's one of our shows is going to be on remote learning.
Absolutely. We've got heaps of things to unpack, which is why I'm really excited. Well, let's just touch on some of the challenges that schools have faced in the recent months. We've obviously seen lockdowns across the globe.
Huge.
I can't imagine being a student in year 11 and 12 having to do that.
Well, I have a daughter in year 12. And she has gone through year 11, year 12, VCE, as it's called in Australia. And, that's hard. It's been tough. And, of course, heaven help me if you've got a Little E. So if you had one in prep or year 1, for example, they've effectively, in Victoria, which has been one of the hardest hit states by lockdown, they've effectively missed 2 years of education. It's hard to replace that in-class learning. It's very, very difficult. And in terms of the challenges this is facing, Mike, we're going to face a whole issue around vaccination. Kids being vaccinated at school, are they allowed to come to school? This whole issue. We're talking about 4 million children. It's a big part of it. For schools, they've had to pivot, they've had to use new technologies. How many of us were Zoom experts 15 months ago?
Not me, I didn't know what it was.
Now it's a verb. It's Zoom.
Let's get on a Zoom.
Let's get on Zoom. Teachers have had to change the way they deliver education, and that's been huge.
Props to them.
What's really interesting, parents for the first time can actually literally step into the classroom. So if you're a parent, you can see how education has been delivered to your child. You're standing in the kitchen hearing what's going on, good, bad or ugly. Very interesting, isn't it? So you're making assessments about the quality. It could be brilliant, and you could be, wow, that teacher's delivering first-class education. You might say, I'm paying for that? Again, so...
Interesting.
And I think this is very interesting. So teachers are being assessed by parents who can hear them teach.
Interesting.
Very fascinating, isn't it?
I can picture nothing worse than being locked down with my parents having to learn. I've got horrific memories of doing my homework from home and having, my father over like, hey, this is how you do this maths and having to do it. Picturing that over a 6-hour period.
It's tough.
Wow. So just unreal, and I'm looking forward again to unpacking more of this further. And so let's talk about the paradigm shift to online. How are schools managing that? Positively, negatively, as you sort of touched on?
There's been a big impact. Okay, so there's been a big impact on enrolments. For example, in the tertiary sector, they've been smashed by the lack of international students coming. Up to a 33% in some universities. There's 41 universities in Australia, and some of those are hugely dependent on the international market. Up to 25-30% of their student body is international fee-paying students. They've been smashed. So we've seen the collapse of that market. It affects a lot of secondary schools as well, Mike. Education is a major investment that people are making. After buying a house, for many people, it's one of the biggest investments they'll ever make in their life.
Yeah.
So, people like to go out and visit the schools. Under COVID, they can't. So when you're making a decision, you kind of like to shop, go and see the thing. If it's a school, can I come and visit? Well, you can't under COVID. So they've had to pivot.
I remember being one of the students who had to show the prospective parents around, in year 11 and 12, walk around the school and say, this is the library, this is where we do this. And but of course you can't do that.
And once upon a time, I think there's been a paradigm shift, as you just touched on earlier. Parents have moved from perhaps being the grateful client. When my parents sent us off, we had no choice where we were going to go to school.
Yes.
So off you go. And do with them what you will, teachers. Now, I think what's happened is people either thinking or saying, I'm the customer here. Whether they're paying a little bit of money for their education or for almost free in the government sector. They do pay some nominal things, school fees, books, etc. School uniform and books, etc.
Oh my gosh.
But in terms of larger schools, they're paying a lot of money. So there's this entitlement, I'm the customer here. If you think you're the customer, guess what? It's a product purchase. There's a transactional relationship and there's a sense of entitlement. And I don't actually think that this is unique to education.
It's funny you say that because I remember people saying to me, or maybe my grandparents, it was like, your parents are paying a lot of money.
Yep.
It was put onto the student to have that sort of, not burden, but responsibility.
Sure.
So it's interesting to hear you sort of say that shift is going, to this, we're paying a lot of money.
People are shopping around. I mean, people are switching. Brand loyalties are starting to break down. And this is not a phenomena in Australia. It's New Zealand, Malaysia, Canada, UK, America. We're seeing it everywhere. That in the research that I've done, and obviously Inquiry Tracker is reaching out across the globe. We're in 5 countries. We're seeing these trends that, Brand loyalties are shifting. You're told to change your phone provider, change your utility provider, change your airline whenever we can fly again, Mike. You know,
Wow.
COVID's making it hard. So you change. And so that phenomena is filtering into education. So, you know, choose what school you want to go to. Don't always send your children to the school that you went to. People are mobile, they're moving around to different states, different cities.
Yep.
Once upon a time, our parents were fairly sedentary. They didn't move a lot.
Yeah.
Now we're more mobile. So choice comes into the market and we're beating up. So schools, primary, secondary and tertiary, have to present their unique selling proposition, their narrative.
It's interesting.
Yep.
It's interesting. So tell us a bit about the website, the Inquiry Tracker website, and how that you are helping.
Well,
shift.
technology like Inquiry Tracker allows, we know, Mike, at Inquiry Tracker, if you said to me, how does a student get on a school's database? Well, a parent either rings up, they walk in the front door, they send an email. That accounts for 4% of inquiries. 96% of how you get a name on your database comes from an inquiry through your website. So if you are not using that retail shop to your best strategic advantage, you're being disadvantaged. So the way Inquiry Tracker works is we work with schools to make, you know, forms front and centre on the school's website, like, you know, book a tour. I want to come and visit you, either virtually or on site. I want a prospectus or an information pack. I want to ask a question. I want to apply or enrol to go to your school. Those buttons, and I'll give a tip to every school here, make those buttons, folks, principals, make those buttons clear and centre on your website, easy to find, book a tour, request an info pack, apply now. Make people fill out a form and capture that data into one seamless database like Inquiry Tracker and others. I mean, we feel we're a best-in-class solution. We think we've developed a fantastic piece of software. Australia are good at education and we're good at thought leadership in this space.
Yeah. Greg, we're running out of time, my friend. There's so much to unpack, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up there for today's first episode. We've got to learn a bit about you and what you're up to. But so thank you again for joining me in the studio today.
Fantastic, Mike. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Looking forward to what's next. Guys, what a great show today. And that is just the beginning. Presented by Inquiry Tracker, you can learn more about how your school can use this clever software solution. Head over to inquirytracker.net. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Mike Loader. See you soon.